Hi everybody, my name is Jen and this video is about my financial transformation. This has been in process for well over 20 years, but I thought this would be helpful to any of you that might be struggling or think that now that you're kind of in midlife that there is no hope for you to turn things around. There is. So this is the first of 3 videos that talks about my transformation process, and I hope you find this helpful. Hello, everyone. My name is Jen, and I am here to talk to you about my personal journey of getting out of debt and living prosperously. I know that this is a very touchy subject for some, and I've really had a wonderful long path on my recovery from debting and recovery from a lot of faulty perceptions that I had that were keeping me broke and living a very abundant life where there's so much clarity around my finances. So I'm hoping that this video is helpful and that my experience might help some of you who are feeling underwater and overwhelmed. So my story starts off like this. I was raised by a single mom for a good part of my childhood, and we were very poor. Um, Meaning that there were some times where there was dinner or peanut butter and jelly for dinner. Um, there were times when I was older, when my mother had gotten married to my stepdad, that we had utilities. Sometimes we didn't have utilities. We had cable when cable was a thing or not, or we had electricity or not, where there was running water or not. So I am well aware that there is third world poor and first world poor, but I would say that we were definitely first world poor. There was a lot of food insecurity, bill insecurity. And so that led me to some really self defeating learned thought processes about money that worked against me later. So because I wasn't raised with money like awareness, my perception is that there were people out there that had money, and that once you have money you don't have to worry, right? That you don't have to think about money. This is just as faulty as the perception that when I'm trying to get fit, I'm looking at these other people who are really fit and thinking, they don't need to think about this. They don't need to worry about this. I want to eat like everyone else. Well, that's just as faulty as me thinking I just want to spend like everyone else. Like, who are the people out there that don't keep track of what they're spending? I personally used to think that rich people, and really to be rich in my perception was anybody that was like, I don't know, had all their utilities and were regularly eating food and would go on vacation. Like, that was rich to me. That they just had money and they could just spend it indiscriminately. And I've come later to learn that some of the people that I respect and know very personally are very well aware of how much money they have, where it goes, where it's invested, what they spend on, and in those categories. So my faulty perception was that once I had money, I could spend whatever I wanted. And I found that also true on my fitness and food journey, where I used to think the same thing, where I just wanted to eat like everyone else. So I just wanted to spend like everyone else. So my perceptions were really, really off. So and that was unfortunate, right? Because there was a lack of security around income and other things and food. I really didn't have any plans about going to college. I really wasn't motivated to get a license or learn to drive. There was no resource at the time for me to get a car. So I really painted myself into this box of faulty perceptions. So what wound up happening is, long story short, I did go to college. I did start working at an early age. Like, I had a job in the mall at 14 years old. I had a job in daycare centers at 16. I was always making my own money because if I wanted something, I had to buy it usually. But I started this process of like spree and remorse, almost addictive in a way where, when I had money, it just burned a hole in my pocket. I had to spend it. And that continued throughout my adulthood. So I wound up in a career that I love. I wound up with a job and a career where I could earn a living wage, which is the first time I had been above the poverty level my entire life. And um, long and short, in my 30s, and I'm able to buy my own little house because for me, success was owning my own little house that I could live in. I never did any research on this. I did not really do any research on the bills that I would incur as a homeowner, the maintenance that would need to happen as a homeowner. Um, if I were to redo this, I would have rented an apartment and not bought a house. But I had my own little bachelorette house and I did love it. So I bought this little house and I was in the house for maybe a year or so and I found out about this wonderful thing called home equity loans and this concept of free money, which we all know there is no such thing really as free money. There is effort and work tied to all money. So I took out my first home equity loan on my house for $16,000. And I was thinking, you know what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to pay off some debt because I wound up getting a couple credit cards and store cards or whatever. And I had a few $1,000s in debt and wanted to pay that off and wanted to put down a down payment on a car or anything. And I'll cut this part of the story real short, but four home equity loans later, in the span, I think, of a year and a half, I took out about $75,000 on a house that only cost me $130,000. So this is back in the early 2000s. This is before the housing bubble popped. And I had a really cute little house. The mortgage on it was what I would be paying in rent. So it made sense for me to build equity, but I had eaten up all that equity. Now, what I was doing on the other side of things too, not just in the equity issue of the house, was I had taken out student loans to pay for me to go through school. And I hadn't thought about this thing that I talk to my kids now. The career you're going into, if you cannot pay off your loans, the totality of your loans, within the first year or two of your salary of your career, then don't take out those loans. Don't go into that career path if you need to take loans. I wasn't really paying attention to this when I went to school and was focusing on, like, I just knew I wanted to go into the line of work that I'm in. And I had no financial literacy. I didn't pursue financial literacy. Numbers really intimidated me. And I just figured I was always going to be dumb about numbers. And when you don't educate yourself about something, you're going to continue to make ignorant mistakes. And that's what I did. So I was taking out student loans to pay for my education. And I wasn't using that money wisely. And I wouldn't say I squandered a lot of it, but I certainly squandered some of it, where I would use some for like living expenses and, some of them were legitimate living expenses and others weren't. I didn't go away to college. I commuted to college. Also, side note, I moved out of my parents' house at 18 on my 18th birthday, which is actually in December. So you can know, like, going back home was not an option for me. So I was trying to live on my own, support myself, living in a shared house with other people. It was a thing. So I had been building up this debt. So now I have student loan debt to the tune of around $75,000. And I had $75,000 in a home equity loan too. So I hit a point where I could not make my monthly expenses. And I was super proud of myself for like getting out of my parents' house and buying my own house. But I was feeling that tremendous pressure from paycheck to paycheck all the time. How am I going to pay for these bills? Towards the end of that 2-week period of time, like, I'd be struggling. I would use credit cards as a backup to get groceries and get gas. And I would always pay a portion of the credit card balance, but not all of it. So here are some things that I did. The first thing that I did was I asked for help. I asked people around me, what do I do when I'm in debt and I don't know what to do and I'm overwhelmed and something's wrong? Like I knew I kept short circuiting something. And that really came to light when I was on vacation. Um, I had just been dating my husband, and I realized like when I took out my third home equity loan, actually, I think the third home equity loan was 75 and the fourth was over 80. I was on vacation and I had nothing. I looked at my bank account online. I got a notification something had bounced. There's no money in my account. This is the end of summer, and I wasn't going to get paid for like at least 3 weeks. And so I called the bank and I did a fourth home equity loan. And I remember when I took out that third home equity loan, I was like, this time's going to be different. This time's going to be different. And I was even praying, like, God, please don't let me, like, spend all this money. Please let me help to have this as a buffer. And of course, I spent it all because I was out of control. Okay. So I know abrupt stop, but here you got to all the gross part of the story where I was doing a ton of damage. In the next story, I get more into the financial recovery part of the story. And I just wanted to break this up just to put a pause in there and saying there's a lot of stuff that may not have made it in the first part where on top of, the home equity loans, there were student loans. Plus, I already mentioned the credit card bills. And at this point, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. I would wake up thinking about money and I'd go to sleep thinking about money. And really, it became a full-on obsession. And that's how sad my life had become, where I was constantly having this low level of stress, constantly worried about money. And it was all my own doing, and I didn't know how to stop that. So part 2 is going to take you into the recovery process, and I hope you find it helpful, and I hope you don't mind me breaking up the videos. But after I did that one long recording, I just felt like some people just might find it to be too much, and it might just be more palatable to be broken up. So here you go on to the next episode, and I'll see you there.